Welcome to The Happy Writer, a show about creating and sustaining a long-term author career. My name is Patty Jansen, writer of science fiction and fantasy. I've published independently since 2011. This show covers motivation, diversification, learning new skills, and your place in your career. Come on in and be happy. In episode 70 of The Happy Writer, I'm going to talk about the claim that we hear a lot, that the book lists, where you pay for a company to send your book out to their audience, have stopped working. First, let's have a bit of history. When I first started publishing, these book advertising lists did not exist. We literally had nowhere to advertise our books. But that didn't really matter because self-publishing was new and exciting, and readers had never seen self-published books before. And then later writers discovered that if you lowered a book to 99 cents, readers found that a great novelty, and they gobbled these books up by the million. But then everyone started doing it, and it became a bit harder to stand out from the pack. We also discovered how to make our books free on Amazon, and that was great, especially because you could make it free, and then thousands and thousands of people would download your book and then quickly make it paid again, and the book would retain the visibility resulting from all those free downloads, so that all those free downloads would lead to a huge spike in visibility and you would get a lot of sales. I didn't have that many books back then, but when I tried this method with a collection of short stories that I had published at that stage, I still have a spike of 300 sales on that collection of random short stories. It really was just as crazy as that. Of course, none of that was lasting, so after a lot of people started doing this, Amazon separated out the free list from the paid list, and then gradually dropped the free list from visibility even further. Those easy methods worked for maybe a couple of months. I imagine that Amazon must have been blasted by their customers about their inability to find the books they wanted in the vast sea of free dreck. Around that time, people started noticing how sometimes they would have big spikes of free books being downloaded without any obvious cause, and soon enough people discovered why this happened. There was a site called Pixel of Ink that would post about free books. They had thousands of subscribers looking for free stuff to read. I'm not sure if they ever did paid books, but you would get huge numbers of downloads from this. There was no way to submit. It didn't cost anything. And their method to earn from the list was to use their affiliate tag on the free books and then raking in the money from the affiliate sales. This was when you could still do that. Of course, Amazon has since stopped you being able to get a commission on anything that has been activated through a free book, and has even put limits on the number of clicks you can get from free books, which, by the way, is one of the reasons an Amazon affiliate account is really not worth having, or being careful with it for the vast majority of writers. They have really screwed down what gets reported. I used to get a few $100s a month from my book's promotions, enough to fund some ads and pay for my mailing list, but these days I'm lucky if it's more than $20. I no longer care about the affiliate account anymore, and I'm not twisting myself into knots for the sake of pleasing them. But this aside. So, Pixel of Ink, where you could officially never submit books anyway, stopped their activities. The new generation of book advertising lists allowed book authors to submit their books and would pick the books they liked and would then post those books out to their audience in a more transparent way. It meant we could submit. But this also meant that it became a pay-to-play game. There were places like Kindle Nation Daily, eReader News Today, Free Kindle Books and Tips, and later BookBub, although BookBub started later and also started by simply sending books out and not charging for it. They first built their massive audience with a lot of Facebook ads and only later started charging. most of these other venues also charge from anywhere to $10 to sometimes about $70 or $100. At this point, BookBub can charge more than $1,000 for some genres. So many of these sites sprang up that for many of them it became quite hard to get quality submissions. I have already said before that I run a science fiction and fantasy newsletter called the eBookaroo. I don't charge authors anything, but I can see that it's very hard to get good quality submissions for these lists, especially because in the past few years their results have not garnered great reviews in the author community. You used to be able to get at least 50 or 60 sales from being featured at eReader News Today. Some other sites used to always get decent results. This was when they charged only $25 or a similar amount. But gradually, two things have happened. In the first place, the results of these ads have gone way down, even for BookBub, and their prices have gone up. Which brings us to the point. Is paying for an ad even worth the expense anymore? I don't really seem to have too much trouble getting accepted by BookBub. Yes, they probably still reject more of my submissions than they take, but if I put my mind to it, I can get featured at least a couple of times a year, if I want. The question is, do I want to? A few years ago, I finally ditched the half-baked program that I was using to calculate my income from my sales, and I wrote my own spreadsheet. I have referred to this before, because it gave me great insight in where my sales were actually coming from. While up till about 2018, I can definitely see great blips in my sales numbers when I got to BookBub. If you compare the money, incoming and outgoing, which is more important, it gets murky. BookBub is very expensive, and yes, you usually earn out. At this point I've had 19, and there isn't one that hasn't earned out. But in my graph past 2018 or so, I couldn't see any relationship between doing a big ad push and getting a BookBub and a sustained level of sales, even for as little as a month. In fact, this sustained increase in my sales has always come from only one thing, and that is listing my books at another venue. Since lately it has become much harder to sell books, should we still do the runaround and submit our books to all these lists? Well, now we have to get into strategy. Because one thing I discovered when doing my spreadsheet was that I had one massive spike in sales, and this was not from a BookBub that I got, but it was actually from releasing a new trilogy, one after the other, about 3 months apart. In another series too, I released a number of books in 1 year, and that led to sustained downloads on book 1, which has been free for a very long time. So both new releases and sustained downloads of people who are interested in the things that you write revive your sales. If you have a long series and the first book is free, the only thing you need to do is to make sure that enough of the right type of people download the first free book, and they will slowly make their way through the series. Now, there are a couple of operative phrases in that sentence. In the first place, the word enough. You need to get a certain number of downloads because only a very small percentage of those will be read, and a small percentage of those will want to buy the next books. You might wonder, as some people do, whether the people on these lists have only subscribed because they can get books for free or 99 cents. Yes, there are those, and the concentration of them is higher on the lists than in the average public. The second operative is the right kind of people. It's all very well if you get 30,000 downloads after a BookBub, but if those people are not really that much into the genre, do you really gain from those downloads except for a brief spike in visibility? Of course, there is a line of thought that says that any visibility is useful, but do you really need to spend $800 for that? So then we get back to these small lists that don't seem to be working anymore, if you have to believe the gossip. There are some, and with some type of book, that I have quite decent results with. Sadly, this will also vary over time, so in my view, it pays to really spread out all the different kinds of advertising you do. Because if we know one thing about the market, or about the audience, or about the industry as a whole, is that it changes constantly and it doesn't behave the same for different books. If you have a new release, book a couple of these lists. If, for example, you're releasing the first book in a new series at 99 cents, this is exactly what I did for the release that did so well a couple of years ago. It also pays to regularly advertise a perma-free in some way. Now, that doesn't have to be paid advertising. You can ask other authors to send it out for you, and you will send out things for them. You can submit your book to a free multi-author box set. I have found those great for continuing sales. But that still doesn't mean, even if you're the creator of the box set, that you don't have to advertise it. I take part in BookFunnel promotions, and I usually submit a free book of my own and one of my box sets that have 7 or 8 other authors in it. None of this costs me anything. Sometimes I book paid promotions with these lists. I make a rule that I don't submit the same book to the same venue more than once a year. Their audience is not that big. If you use the same book too often at promotions, things get stale. A list that gave you decent results for $25 will give you worse results 6 months later. You really do have to give it a decent break. So you find something else. You find another list, you collaborate with some different authors, or you buy an ad on another platform like Facebook or Amazon. None of these are guaranteed to keep working forever, and in all honesty, they probably won't. Of course, list ads decrease in value if you keep using the same ones for the same books over and over again. Also, the audience of that particular list might not be so much into your book. You got to try a few things and work out which avenues work for you. It's not useful for me to list which the good sites are for me, because it's likely going to be different for you. So the main question that I started off with, have these lists stopped working? To a certain extent, they have. Very few books get the fabled results that BookBub once used to give. The bigger your downloads, the smaller the percentage of people who will go on to read the next book. And you may not overall gain very much from using them, at least not immediately. But the lists are another method to advertise your books. The strategy still remains. You make a book free or discount it. It has to be an attractive discount, like a box set for 99 cents. Then book some ads and find the venues which will work for you. People will download the free book and some will go on to buy the next books. Rinse and repeat. That is what we're still trying to do. And this strategy will always continue to work. It's just that the methods we have to advertise the free book have become fairly crowded. You have to work harder to get people to download. You may not choose to go for a blunderbuss approach, but prefer to target readers of your genre on venues like Facebook. You don't just want people to download, you want them to read your book, and then you want them to like it and buy the next one. And if you can find pockets of these people who buy books and don't just get the freebies, and who like your kind of books, then that's gold. But you also have to scour around to find them and give away as many free books as you can in the process, all of which means that you have to keep trying everything and ditch the things that don't work. But I'm pretty sure I've already told you not to expect or look for a magic bullet. It isn't even about the magic bullet anyway. It's about getting those people to become your fans, finding your audience, getting them onto your mailing list. The book advertising lists have a role to play in this process. What that role is depends on your books and your persistence. That was my perspective on book lists and how they can still be useful for you. In the next episode, I will consider the question, when should you start advertising? listening to the Happy Writer Show. Check out links and information about other episodes on my website at pattyjansen.com, where you can also find out about my books. You can support me by subscribing to the show or on Patreon at patreon.com/pattyjansen.